In this tutorial, I'll be showing you how to create a Bloom fly-in box. What this is an email opt-in box that slides up from the bottom of the browser window, either on the right-hand side, left-hand side, or the center. And it slides up based on specific user interactions that you can define. For example, on this page, I have a right-hand side fly-in box that is triggered when a user reaches the bottom of the post. So if I scroll down to the bottom of the post, you're going to get this fly-in box that invites them to subscribe to your newsletter. So to get started on your first fly-in box, you're going to want to go to the WordPress dashboard, locate the Bloom settings tab here, and click on the opt-in forms link. This will bring you to the opt-in management page where you can both manage your current opt-ins as well as create new ones. So here's the opt-in that you just saw, and I'm going to delete this for now and start over so you can see the entire design process. Now, it's important to note that before you can create any opt-in type, you first need to connect Bloom to your email marketing software, such as MailChimp, Aweber, and Constant Contact, or any of the 12 account types that we currently support at the launch of Bloom, and we'll be adding more account types in the future. So if you need more clarification about how to sync an account with Bloom, be sure to check out our accounts tutorial where I go into detail about every single type of account and how to link it up. Usually the process involves getting an API key from the website and copying and pasting it into Bloom and authorizing your account with Bloom. So like I said, before you can create an opt-in, you can have to go over to the accounts page here and add a new account. As you can see here, all my current accounts that I have linked up. You can either add a new account here, or you can add a new account during the design process of the opt-in form. So to get started on your first fly-in box, you're going to click the new opt-in button. This will give you a list of all the different opt-in types that Bloom comes with, and you're going to want to select the fly-in type. And on the first tab here, this is the first of 3 tabs. So we have 3 steps during the opt-in creation process of a fly-in box: the setup, design, and then display settings. So during the setup, you're just giving your opt-in box a name. I'm just going to call it fly-in blog, because I'm going to make this fly-in appear on my blog. And you're also going to want to select an account. So like I said before, since I already have these synced up, I can select Aweber, choose my account, and then choose my list as well. So each opt-in form has to be connected to an account and then connected to a list so that Bloom knows where the subscriber should be added to, which list should be added to. And if you don't have an account, like I said, add an account in the accounts tab or add an account right here. So if you don't have an account, you can add one. So if I select Aweber, you can select add an account here, and then this will take you through the authorization process, and you can do that for any of the account types. But like I said, since I already have an account synced up, I don't have to do that. I just have to select my account and then select my list. And I'm going to select this first list here and then click next to move on to the design process. Now the design process is the same with every single opt-in type. When you first create an opt-in, you're going to be greeted with a list of pre-made templates. And what these are just kind of, we've done some work for you and designed a bunch of different templates based on the design settings that Bloom comes with. So these are just kind of like a different collection of design settings that we think look nice, and they can serve as a great starting point, or they can just serve as a great pre-made template for you. If the colors look nice, some of these are going to look great without any kind of modification. But no matter which template you select, you have full control over the colors, over the form orientation, the image, and all that. So really just pick one that looks nice to you, whether it be one you want to use as is or one you want to customize. So I'm going to select this one right here and then move on to the next step, which is customize. So that template I just selected, you can preview it by clicking the preview button up here. And in fact, at any point during the design process, you can click that preview link, which follows you around here to see the changes you've made. So I'm going to go through each of these design options briefly. But if you want to learn more about these design settings, then be sure to check out our design settings tutorial. And in that tutorial, I don't just go over each of the settings. I also give you some tips about how to use these settings effectively, and especially how these settings apply to different opt-in types and all that. So if you're looking for more detail, head over to that tutorial. But in this case, I'm just going to go over each of them briefly. So first up, we have our opt-in title and message, and this just affects the text that appears within the flying box. So you could add some more text here, like subscribe to our newsletter to get access to all of our free resources. And if you click the preview button, you can see that that heading has now been changed. You can also use the formatting options here. So if you're creating a fly-in with a centered image, it might look nice to center this text. So you can do that if you like. Preview that. You can see it kind of looks nice with this image with the text already centered. So I'm going to keep it that way and move on to the image settings. Here you can upload a new image. Choose not to use an image. You can also adjust the orientation of the image, whether it be above the text, below the text, or to the left or the right of the text. So right now it's set to above text, but I could change it to below text if I wanted. And if we preview that, you can see the image gets placed below the text. Or you could just have no image. That looks nice sometimes too. So there's no reason to use an image if you don't want to. And you can also upload your own image by clicking this upload an image button. You can also adjust the animation. So right now by default it's just kind of sliding up on load. So this animation occurs when the flying box first appears. So I could change that to something maybe a little more fun. I could change to flip. You can see this kind of flips in there, which is cool. So if you like that effect, go with that. And we have a bunch of different animations that you can kind of test out here. And last of all is the hide on mobile option. So if you want to turn this image off on mobile, you can do so. And the reason that's useful is that, sometimes if you have like a long heading or a long message, the opt-in form, as it gets reduced in width, it increases in height because the text has to go somewhere, right? So this opt-in box ends up being kind of stretched vertically, and on a mobile phone, it might get stretched so far vertically that it ends up being taller than the average screen size, which might be a little bit annoying, especially in the form of a fly-in box, because then it's just kind of difficult. They have to actually scroll around to get to the submit button, and it's just not optimum. So if you have a long header, then you could choose to disable the mobile image, which would give more room for the text and make the overall size smaller. Next up, we have the opt-in styling. These are like the general opt-in styling options for the entire box. So we have a background color. We have a header font and body font. So if I want to change the background color, I could. Let's see if I just changed it to, let's change it to red and preview that. You can see the background color changes to red. Not the best color for me to use with that image, so I'm going to change it back. And you can also adjust the header font and body font. We have just dozens of fonts here to choose from. You can also adjust the text color. So this, you can choose the text color to either be light or dark. So since we have a dark background color, this dark blue, we're going to choose a light text color, which ensures that text is going to be readable. Now, if you had a light background color, you might want to choose to have a dark text color instead, which I'll show you now. So if I change this to white and I preview it, you can't see the text because white on white is invisible. So in that case, you'd want to change to dark text. And there you go, it looks much better. But again, I'm going to change back to light text, change back my background color. And now we have back to where we started, which looks good. Next up is the corner style. Now you can choose to have either squared or rounded corners. So this is purely an aesthetic choice. And if your website currently has a bunch of rounded corners, then you might want to use rounded instead of squared. Either way looks good to me. It really depends on what you have going on in your own website. Next is the border. So you can add a border to any opt-in box. Right now there's no border applied, but if you do choose to add a border, you're going to see some additional options pop up, which is the border color as well as the border style. So first up, you're going to want to choose a border. And since I have that kind of red-orange image right now, I'm going to choose a red-orange border like that. And then you can also choose the border style, but let's preview this first. So right now I have this orange border on all four sides, and it's this kind of standard solid border. Now, like I said, we have different border styles. We have a dashed border, a double border, inlaid border, and then this kind of a letterhead border, which is a fun style. So if we look at that, it kind of adds this stripe effect, which is cool. And in addition to the edge styles, you can also choose to have the border only appear on certain sides of the box. So right now we have full border selected, but I could also choose just to have the border on the right and left or bottom or top. So if we try putting it just on the top and bottom, for example, that sometimes looks nice, as you can see here. So I'm going to stick with that look and then move on to the form setup. And here you can adjust the form orientation. Now, going back to our preview, the form is this part on the bottom here with the email input and the subscribe button, as well as this gray-brown background here. So you can adjust all of these colors as well as the form orientation and the form field orientation. So first up is the overall form orientation. Right now I have it sitting on the bottom of the box, but I could have it be on the left or the right. So if I put it on the right, for example, you can see what that looks like. And you can have it on the left as well, but I'm going to put it back on the bottom. You can also choose to include the name field. So right now we're only collecting the email address, but if you want to collect the name, whether it be first and last name or just the first name, you can do that by enabling it here. And then you can also adjust the placeholder text that appears in the input forms as well as the text that appears in the button. And finally, you can also adjust that button text color. And much like the overall Optin color, you want to change that back and forth between light and dark depending on the button color, button background color you've chosen in the next section, which is the form styling section. Now here you can also choose the form field orientation. So before we chose the overall form orientation, adjusting it either to be on the left, right, or the bottom. Now form field orientation affects the input fields within the form, and you can have them to be either stacked on top of each other or inline in a single horizontal row. So if I change it to inline form fields, you're going to see that that the button and the input field are now in a single row. So you can do that. And you can also adjust the form text color. So right now we have dark text, but if you changed it to light text, this text is going to change to light and the background is going to change to dark. And then you can adjust the form background color and the button color as well, just like you have done with the overall Optin box color. Finally, we have our edge styles. This affects the edge between the form and the main Optin box. And so we have a bunch of fun different edges you can use, such as this zigzag edge. If I preview this, you can see it adds this edge between, like I said, the form and the text and the image. And so if you're trying to make a more playful style Optin box, you might go with the zigzag edge. Or if you're going with something more traditional, I might go with the caret or the arrow, such as this, which is a nice option. So yeah, it really depends on what you think looks best with your website and will, be attractive to your visitors. And finally, we have the footer text. This is a text that appears below the input form and the submit button. And you can use this to maybe link out to your privacy policy or assure your visitors that you won't be sharing their information. You can adjust the success message, which appears after someone successfully subscribes to your list. And finally, you can input custom CSS. So if you're CSS savvy, you can add your own custom code here if these design options weren't enough for you. All right, and next up we have the display settings. Now the display settings affect where your form appears and also when it appears. So the fly-in box has a couple different sections here that aren't included with all Optin types. And the reason that is because unlike the below the post Optin, for example, which is always visible when you scroll down, it's always there below the post, the fly-in box starts in an invisible state and then becomes visible. And when it becomes visible is based on a certain trigger. So these triggers are based off user interactions. And so depending on something that the visitor does on your website, that's going to affect when that fly-in box flies in. And that's what we call triggers. And those are down here inside the load-in settings. For example, as I showed you earlier, this particular fly-in box, when I first previewed it for you, was being triggered when the user reached the bottom of the post. But there's a couple more triggers you can use as well, so I'll go over those. You can also adjust the fly-in orientation. This is where the fly-in box appears, either on the right side of your page, left side, or in the center. And we also have display settings, where you can choose where the fly-in box appears. For example, you can have it only appear on posts or only appear on pages, or you could have it only appear on certain categories within your posts, or you could even target or exclude individual posts and individual pages. Now, I'm going to go over these settings briefly, but much like all of our other settings, we have detailed tutorials for this. So if you want to learn more about the triggers, then be sure to check out our triggers tutorial. And if you want to learn more about the display settings, which control where the flying box appears on your website, then be sure to check out our display settings tutorial. And I go into a lot of detail there. And there's a lot of really cool things you can do with these settings and a lot of creative ways you can use them to really increase your conversion rate. So I encourage you to go check out those tutorials if I haven't given you enough information in this brief tutorial. So let's first talk about these load-in settings. First up is the intro animation. This is simply the animation that occurs when the flying box first appears. So you have it slide up or flip in. These are the same animations we saw earlier when we were looking at the image animation, so you can just choose an animation that you like. And next we have our triggers. So there's a few different triggers here you can use, 6 different triggers, and I'm going to go over each of them briefly. First one is the trigger after time delay, and what this does is causes the flying box to appear just on a basic countdown. So once a visitor is on your page and they've been on your page for a certain amount of seconds, the flying box will appear, and you can adjust that number of seconds. So right now it's set to 20. If this was enabled and someone landed on a page with the flying box, it would appear after they've been on the page for 20 seconds. Next up is the trigger after inactivity. This works much like the time delay, except that countdown only occurs when the visitor has become idle. And if they remain idle for a certain amount of time that you specify here, then the fly-in will fly in. And this is useful. Let's say if someone has opened a new tab and they forgot about your page, and then they're about to close other tabs and they come to your tab and they realize, oh wait, we have something's changed. I see this big box. You re-grab their attention and maybe you can salvage that visitor. Maybe you can get them to sign up to your list. And so that's how that works. And next is the trigger at the bottom of the post, which I already went over. This is one of my favorite triggers because it only engages those visitors who are engaged with your website, which means they have actually read your page. They've gotten to the bottom of the page. They've obviously they're interested in it, and therefore they're a good candidate to be a potential subscriber. And in addition to that, in addition to targeting people who are engaged with your website, it also does a good job of not interrupting them while they're reading. So this pop-up this fly-in isn't going to fly in when they're halfway through the post and they're most engaged and interrupt their reading experience. Instead, it's only going to fly in when they hit the bottom of the post. So this is a great trigger, and I use it almost every time I create a pop-up or a fly-in box. Next is the trigger after commenting, and this is similar to the trigger at the bottom of the post, but it almost adds another layer of engagement, which means it requires the visitor to comment, and after they comment, they get shown the fly-in. And so this is not only a visitor who has read your post, they've actually engaged with the post personally and taken part in the post, and so they're probably very interested in following up the post, following up with your next blog post, and so that's a really good candidate for a potential subscriber as well. And you can even create different fly-in boxes or different pop-ups and combine pop-ups and fly-in boxes with different triggers and show them to different users based on these triggers. So let's say you create 2 fly-in boxes. One could be only triggered after someone finishes reading a post, while the second one might only be triggered after someone comments. And you could actually tailor that second one to the commenting visitors. You might say, instead of just, hey, subscribe to our RSS list or something like that, you could say, hey, thanks for commenting. We love your feedback. Please subscribe to our list, and we'd love to hear from you in the future. That kind of personal message might be more engaging. You might see a much higher conversion rate with that. So that's an example of how you can actually create specific opt-in boxes for these specific user interactions. Next is the trigger after scrolling. What this does is it'll trigger the fly-in when the visitor reaches a certain percentage down the page, which you can customize here. So right now it's set to 50%. And so if I change that to 30, then when the visitor reached 30% down the page, the fly-in box would appear. And this could be useful if you have, let's say, a very long sales page, and you decided, well, I don't want the fly-in to fly in at the very, very bottom. I want it to, fly in halfway through when I think, this visitor is most engaged and most likely to subscribe. So you might have a certain percentage that you think is optimum. and you can use this trigger for that. Next up is the trigger after purchasing. And what this does is triggers the flying box right after someone purchases a product through WooCommerce. Right now, we only have WooCommerce support at the launch of Bloom, but we may be adding more. So be sure to check the written documentation below to see a list of all the e-commerce systems we support. But how this works with WooCommerce is that if someone purchases a product, they reach the thank you page, then they get greeted with a nice little fly-in. And like I said, this is an opportunity for you to create a specific fly-in box just for this trigger, just for this specific visitor, because you could tailor that box to them. In fact, you could create a whole new list in your email marketing software and make an autoresponder out of that list, and even start off the list with a discount off their next purchase. So this fly-in box might say, "Thanks for purchasing. Sign up to our newsletter and get 10% off your next purchase." You adjust the welcome email for that autoresponder. It sends them a coupon, and then over the next weeks and months, you continue to send them information about your products, customer testimonials, case studies, and you try to turn that customer into a returning customer. That's what this trigger is all about. All right, next up is the display once per session option. And what this does is it limits the amount of times the fly-in box will be displayed. And this is useful because if you have a fly-in box that's on every single page of your website, and every time someone clicks to a new page, they close the fly-in box, and then they click to a new page, they close it again, they have to do this over and over again, that might get pretty frustrating. So if you enable this display once per session, it's only going to display one time, and when they close it, it's not going to come back until their session duration expires, which you can adjust here. So let's say you have the session duration 7 days. That means when someone closes that fly-in box, it's going to stay closed until a week goes by, and then it's going to pop up again. Next, we have the hide on mobile option. What this does is hides the fly-in when someone visits your website on a mobile device. And the reason this is useful is because if you happen to have, let's say, a pop-up and a fly-in box enabled on a single page, while that might be fine on a desktop computer because there's plenty of real estate for both a fly-in box and a pop-up box, on a mobile device, on the other hand, when the width of the screen gets reduced, both the pop-up and the fly-in box tend to take up almost the whole screen, in which case you're going to have two identical pop-ups and you have to close them both. It's just not going to be, there's no point to do that. So if that happens to be the case, you can simply hide one of those on mobile by selecting this option. All right, so I'm going to go back and change this back to trigger after commenting, and then we can move on to the display settings. And what these do is control where your fly-in box appears, whereas the triggers affected when it appeared, these affect where it appears on your website. So you could target specific areas of your site, such as post types, such as posts and pages. So WordPress comes with various post types, or actually just two post types, posts and pages. You probably are familiar with those. You create them all the time. You create posts and you create pages, and they're different, right? So posts are the things that are in categories, and they're typically blog posts and stuff like that, whereas pages might be your About Us page or your home page. So right off the bat, you can target specific post types. You might create a fly-in box that it's only for your blog posts, so you might only display it on your blog posts, and then you might create a different fly-in box and have that be displayed for your pages. And if your theme or plugins you have installed, if they register new post types, for example, we're using Divi, the Divi theme, and that comes with a project post type, those will also display here. So right now I'm just going to keep it on posts. And if you have posts selected, you can also choose which categories the fly-in box either appears or does not appear on. So I could deselect these if I didn't want them to appear there. And finally, we also have the individual page and post targeting options, where you can either exclude or include specific pages. So right now I have the fly-in box appearing on all my posts, and because I don't want it to display on all of my pages, but let's say I wanted to display it on all my posts, but also just display it on one page in particular, I could do that. I could say display on these pages and select the page I'd like to, in which case that fly-in box is going to appear on all my posts, and then just this one page and no other page. Along those same lines, you can also exclude pages and posts. So right now, I have the fly-in box being displayed on every single post of my website, But if I wanted to not have it show up on any particular post, you could select that post here and it will no longer display there. So yeah, that concludes all of the steps of the fly-in creation process. And when you're all done, you just click save and exit. And you're going to see the fly-in we just created, fly-in blog, which is what I named it. So now that we've finished creating our fly-in box, if we head over to our website and take a look at one of our posts and we scroll down to the bottom of the post, which is the trigger we selected for this fly-in box, that fly-in is going to appear. So if I scroll down here, you can see the fly-in box we created with all the design options we customized, flies in on the post because we've chosen to have this fly-in box appear on posts and not pages, and it is triggered by the bottom of the post trigger. So yeah, that's a basic overview of how to make a fly-in box. And like I said, you can use those display settings and those triggers to really create very specific fly-in boxes for different users on your website. And just to give you like an example of how easy that would be, I'm going to head back to the dashboard and go back to our Optin management page. And I'm going to create another fly-in box that's going to be used for our pages. So we have a fly-in for our blog posts, and this fly-in box is very specific to our blog readers, and it's going to ask them to subscribe to our blog. And more than likely, you will, if you've created this kind of fly-in box and this kind of form on your blog, you've probably created an RSS to email campaign using MailChimp or Aweber or whatever email marketing software you're using. And so people who sign up to that list are going to get daily updates of your blog posts. Well, let's say you have a web design agency, and your main purpose for the website is to get new clients. And so your home page, your services page, your about us page, those type of pages, people visiting those pages probably aren't interested in getting your RSS feed sent to their email, but they might be interested in something else related to your products and services. And you probably want to add them to a different list as well. You probably want to have them on an autoresponder with stuff about your services that tries to convert them into a paying customer. And so there's an example where you might want to create one fly-in box for your blog and your blog readers, and a second fly-in box for your pages and your potential customers. And so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to duplicate this fly-in by clicking the duplication button and then duplicating it into another fly-in box. So it's as easy as that. I've duplicated the fly-in into another fly-in, and I'm going to edit the settings, and this time I'm going to change it to my other lists. I'm going to select a different Aweber list because I want to create a different list for my potential customers. And then I'm going to go over to the design settings, and I'm going to say something else that would be more interesting to these potential customers. I'll say something like, learn more about our products and get a free quote. So this is a great way to kind of encourage your potential customers to input their email address so you can follow up with them and try to pitch them on your services. And you might want to change the design a little bit. So maybe instead of the subscribe button, maybe you choose a different image that doesn't have anything to do with subscribing. And you can customize the rest of the design as well, but I think everything looks good. So I'm going to continue on to the display settings. And this time, instead of displaying them on posts, I'm going to deselect posts and have them display on pages instead. And as far as the trigger is concerned, I'm going to trigger it after a time delay instead of triggering it at the bottom of the post. And I'm going to set that delay to 10 seconds. And I'm going to save and exit. So now we have two fly-in boxes, one for pages and potential customers, one for posts and our blog readers. And so if we visit our home page here, which is a page and not a post, and we wait for 10 seconds, we're going to see that new fly-in box that we just created. And it's going to fly in from the bottom right here. And there we go. There it is. And then if we go over to our blog, we're going to see a different fly-in box, which is the one we created for our blog readers. So there you have it. There's how you create fly-in boxes with Bloom, and also how you can create different fly-in boxes for different parts of your website.